dinosaurs have been incredibly important to the history of visual media, animation, and the techno-aesthetic forms at large. Let's go back to 1914. Gertie the Dinosaur was this interesting little short film project. Gertie, it was an animation where the sauropod would be interacting with the audience, on a kind of flat screen, and then he'd actually be very directly interacting with the host, his animator, who would hand him an apple that would go behind the screen in real life, but on screen, on the projection, the apple would appear to the side, the sauropod would take it, he'd eat it up. Gertie was his name. It was very powerful, and it was a very kind of evocative, instantaneous moment for the culture of that time. Very nice piece of pop modernism, and of course, where it coalesced into a great feature film form, for not as a 2D animation, was as the stop motion artistry of Willis H. O'Brien for the 1925 Lost World. This was realised in an even more artful form during the sound era, early sound era, 1933's King Kong. The next major dino movie you have employed what we call now the Slurposaur method. That's 1 million BC from 1940. We saw a return to stop motion, albeit in a more sort of primitive, clunky form in 1948's Unknown Island, as well as in 1951's Lost Continent. Though that's the execution in that is better than in Unknown Island. And Willis H. O'Brien, I don't think he really worked on another dino flick to my knowledge. I don't know how much projects he works on after King Kong and Son of Kong. And I know Mighty Joe Young, but people say Harryhausen did a lot of that. But anyway, dinosaur films afterward tended to occasionally employ the stock footage from 1 million BC, as did the great Norman Dorn, who's a silent era pioneer, but he found himself working on a B picture called sort of dino flick called Two Lost Worlds from 1951. I think the reason is because Norman Dorn he was an American filmmaker. He spent some time in Australia in the 20s. He directed our famous film From the Dawn of His Natural Life, I think it's called, for the term of his natural life. It's quite good, from the late 20s, and period piece. And Two Lost Worlds are set in Australia, so maybe that's why they had him film that. But I suspect that a lot of the footage of Australia is stock footage interspersed with sets in California. You could make California look like Australia if I had too much difficulty, just throw some kangaroos in there. Anyway, speaking of Ray Harryhausen, who we mentioned earlier, of course he did Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and then dinosaur films sort of get an entirely new character with, I guess, the kaiju genre in a sense begins as dino flicks, if you count the original Gojira, which is directly inspired by the likes of King Kong, but especially that previous year's, the just aforementioned Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Another beautiful instance of stop-motion dinosaurs occurs in Carol Semon's Journey to the Beginning of Time, which is an extraordinary picture. A decent effort was in the film's so-so, but the animation's beautiful, for Beast of Hollow Mountain, 1956. Harryhausen would animate some dinosaurs for a segment in Owen Allen's The Animal World. We get a clunky, ugly T-Rex in Virgil Vogel's 57B movie, The Land Unknown. I believe Varan, the Ishiro Honda kaiju picture, I think he was meant to be a dinosaur. I mean, as opposed to Mothra or... I guess... Well, Rodan doesn't count because pterosaurs were not dinosaurs. Willis H. O'Brien, he did return, excuse me. I forgot about this. Behemoth the Sea Monster. I'm just looking at a list, excuse me. Behemoth the Sea Monster, UK picture, very good. Directed by the same director as 20,000 Fathoms. Yeah, Eugene Lurie. And now it brings us to Dinosaurus. A combination of sort of stop-motion creatures and a bit of puppetry. Dinosaurus is, in some respects, I was about to say a better version of Beast from Hollow Mountain, because they're both set in, I was going to say, I believe it was set the Caribbean, and Beast from Hollow Mountain was set in Mexico. So they're sort of taking place in territories in the Americas, but sort of south of the North American region, I don't know if you'd call it Caribbean, Central America or not, probably not. But we would consider this an instance of, I don't know, like, films like this are meant to be sort of exotic, locale pieces, as well as sort of dino flicks. They were escapism in a couple of ways, I suppose. In the post-war America was subject to, alongside the space age, the tiki age. You see, both were ideas of escape in their own fun way, because who wouldn't want to escape from the dull sort of picket white fences nonsense of the 50s? Anyway, the special effects from this film are credited to... I'm not sure, I'm literally looking, it doesn't appear to say here. It's horrifying. Well, I know the film was directed by Mr. Irvin S. Yeworth. We know him for directing 1959's, and this is a fun film actually, 4D Man. I think it's arguably one of the better of those sort of 50s predictable sci-fi horror flicks. He's best well known really for the 58 Blob, which is a decent film. I think I like the 80s one slightly more. I haven't seen either of those in a long time. But yeah, Irvin Yeworth, he directed a film from 67 called Way Out, which I've been told is very good. I'd like to check that out. But it's quite a morbid premise if you want to look that up. Anyway, do I have much else to share about Dinosaurus? These screen caps have gone on for a bit too long. I didn't take a huge amount. And we're nearly 6.5 minutes. And some people are going to be like, you should be scripting these instead of improvising these. But here's the thing. Scripted video would be a lot shorter, for better or for worse. And also, what can I script about this? It's Dinosaurus from 1960. What the heck do you possibly want me to say?